We're a small church, we're not slick, and we're definitely not perfect. Like everybody else when lockdown first started, what we did was we clung to a Bible passage, Mark 10, where Jesus says, "Let the children come to me and do not stop them." And we knew that Jesus wanted to meet with kids despite the pandemic. Our church met on Zoom. The kids team was given a 5-minute slot in between at the end of worship and at the beginning of the preach. So we decided what we wanted to do with that 5-minute slot was to give our kids some tools. We wanted to equip them to meet with God on the Sunday, but also to practically take that into their week ahead. So over lockdown, we wrote 18 5 to 10 minute slots of teaching, and each one unpacked something about God that we knew would equip our kids. We found it worked best to keep it short. So anything that went on for too long, we definitely lost the kids' interest. We tried to keep it quite fast, and we also kept it visual and, where possible, funny. We found that humour definitely pulled the kids in. So we based our 5-minute Zoom slots on that quote that you've probably heard. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. So what we did was we took every promise of God or every truth of God that we wanted to tell the kids, and we made sure that first of all they did it through some kind of game that everybody played all together at home, and that was a really good way of pulling the kids in. And then we unpacked the truth visually, so we used props and dressing up, and I think every week looked a little bit different. We tried to mix it up. And we also, towards the end, what we found actually was that kids they found it harder to engage if it was just me talking or one of the members of the team talking like this. What they found easier to engage with was a conversation. So we would often have 2 team members from the same household talking together and discussing the truth, so often disagreeing, so that then the kids felt, I think it was easier for the kids to engage with a discussion or an argument than it was for them to engage with just someone telling them or talking at them. And then the other thing that we found worked really well, and we didn't discover this till sort of the end of lockdown, was using our young leaders at age 13 to 16 and our apprentices aged 10 to 12. We actually, in the end, handed over to them, and they did all of our teaching online, because we found that the kids engaged much better with their peers, and their peers also presented the truths and the promises of God and the unpacking of scripture in a way that the kids could relate to and grasp. And then also over the 6 months we produced 4 tear-off sheets. So these were they're prayer tear-off sheets, and they're designed to help families to pray together. So they're like would you rather prayer challenges. So the kids can take one of these and they can choose whether they would rather pray with a big shout or a tiny whisper, or pray brushing their teeth or brushing their hair. And these were designed to help families to pray together. And then we also gave our families daily prayer ideas on social media. So we every day we posted a new prayer idea. So we encourage them to do charade prayers or alphabet prayers or spin the bottle prayers. So we did visit our kids, our non-church kids, every week. During the very strict lockdown, we just left a little note and saying we're thinking of them in a little toy, like a Rubik's Cube or a puzzle or something, outside their door, and rang the bell and sort of ran away. So that we weren't in contact with them. Yeah, to be honest, it's sad, but I feel like we have actually had less engagement with our non-church families through COVID. We took all the rules and the guidance and we translated it into the vision we have for our kids. And so comparing the vision we have for our kids and the rules and guidance, we could then really quite clearly see what had to, looking at our normal morning of church, what had to go, what could stay, and what had to be altered a little bit. Communicating the risk assessment with team and parents and kids was also really, really important, because then it meant everybody was reassured and everybody was on the same page, and it helped generally with all the rule keeping. We kept our kids in bubbles of no more than 15 children. We introduced a no school rule. What we didn't want was for church on a Sunday morning to become another morning of school. And within that no school rule, we bigged up competition. So we split our bubbles into teams and we awarded points for absolutely everything. And this was actually a really brilliant way of helping the kids to obey all the new rules and regulations that COVID had brought in, but in a fun way. We also found that moving fast through the morning was really, really helpful. So moving from one thing to another very quickly meant that the kids didn't have an opportunity or a chance to break any of the rules. We embraced mess. You might say, why on earth did you embrace mess? And it's because after a week of following rules and guidelines and staying clean, the kids got to us on a Sunday morning and they just absolutely loved the opportunity to make a mess. So we always made sure we had at least one messy game that all the children could join in and play with. So we have written a COVID compliant curriculum, and that is available to download for free on our website if you want, and it contains all our COVID compliant games, top tips on writing risk assessments and things to remember.
So the main challenge that we've recognised within all the local churches that we're working with at the moment is that balance between some people who are desperate to come back in person and want everything back to normal as quickly as possible, others who are very tentative, and some who are just like, definitely not. And how on earth you cater for that huge variety within one congregation. So the way that we've supported the churches we work with locally to meet that need is through something called Family Box. So each family will receive a box like this through the post each week. That is full of the resources that they would usually get if they were to come to church that Sunday morning. So it's got all the tissue paper, all the lollipops, all the usual teaching resources. So then on a Sunday morning, the family can sit down together and do these activities, have these conversations about that particular teaching point together as a family. They want to do it all together on a Sunday, spread it out through the week and do sort of an activity a day, or come to something we call Balloon Stream and do it together. For most of our churches, they've switched online, and so we did the same with the children's ministry. Each week they log on to a Zoom call that's live with their usual children's work at all, so they see loads of familiar faces, but also children from different churches, where we run our usual session virtually. And the children have the opportunity to talk to us. It's live, it's not pre-recorded, when we have large numbers splitting into smaller groups in breakout rooms to really explore and take those questions a little bit deeper. We encourage parents to be involved in that as well, if they're not on another church call at the same time, so that they can be part of those conversations and continue them throughout the week. Where we had churches who then started to come back to face-to-face ministry on a Sunday morning with children, but still had that split of some children who were happy going back to church, others who didn't want to. We then did a bit of a hybrid where the children in church would receive the same pack as the children at home and could stream, and the whole group of children at church could stream onto the call and see all the children who weren't at church. Lovely to hear the feedback from parents who've said, we've never really known quite how to have these godly conversations with our kids, and it's been really good just to have a bit of a framework and something to sort of follow through and do with them to help us start to talk about it.
Well, so in this season, we as a church have kind of been looking at how we can prioritise connection over content. We can produce a certain level of content, but we thought, how can we look to signpost families and children to other content so that we can really focus on how can we build connection? And one of the simple things we have done, kind of dividing it amongst our church families, to do like a buddy system. So like people phoning each other on a regular basis, especially during the first lockdown, just to be able to build on that connection. And then as the months have kind of grown, we have done some more like family Zooms and family fun. And then in the summer, one of the things that we really wanted to do was getting out and about, because again, nothing beats connection than actually spending time with people. So as well as being involved in church leadership, another hat I wear is being involved with the Kitchen Table Project, which is about looking at how we equip parents and families to nurture faith at home, to make the most of the everyday moments that we have. And in that, a big part of my role is working with churches. So thinking, is it just about providing a great children's event or content, to actually, how are we equipping the whole family? As we talk with churches from many different denominations, that actually there is a real hunger and appetite for families to grow together. And I've been just so encouraged that actually it's not about often the big things or the complicated things. It's sometimes the simple ideas which are the best. Just simply encouraging parents to make the most of the everyday moments. Is send out a message at the beginning of the week or on the WhatsApp or the Facebook group to go, have you thought about making the most of the walk to school this week? What could you talk about? What could you pray? So giving some real practical ideas. The feedback and the stories that week of parents and families was so encouraging for that church to go, yes, this is a really good journey to be on. One of our real hearts here at the Kitchen Table Project is to resource and support churches. So if you want to go on our website, which is the Kitchen Table Project, just pop that into Google. And on there, you will find so many resources for you as the church, as well as for parents and families. Our Raising Faith course, which can be done online. And the great thing is there's a free digital download with everything you need there. So why not check that out? We have the Raising Faith book, which is a really good resource, which could be put into parents' hands in this season. And one of the things that I love there is something called the Inspire Session, which is simply a one-session resource. One of the questions on there is, when was a time you had to say sorry to your child? I remember asking that with a group of parents recently, and that was the only thing I had to ask for the next hour, because then the next hour flowed conversation, encouragement, prayers. One of the things churches are realizing is that people are feeling lonely. How can we connect other families to realize that they're not the only one going through what they're going through?
The idea of Muddy Church started over 4 years ago with me, but it started way back in Genesis, right in the beginning of creation, where God took a walk with Adam and Eve and invited to hear about their story. And we hear God looking for them and calling out to them. And that idea of a God who is interested in our everyday really resonated with me for my community, for myself, for my family, to use that kind of well-being that we all need right now, with mental well-being and physical well-being, of getting out, getting into fresh air, away from screens, away from houses that we've been locked into, finding space, stilling ourselves, connecting in deep ways. So Muddy Church tries to do that. The idea isn't about a programme or us telling you how to do it. It's run all around the country and much further beyond, where different churches and different backgrounds have said, oh, we could do this because it's cheap, it's free, it's using what's available to us. It doesn't take a load of planning, it doesn't take a load of resources, but using the natural things around us. So one of the great things is that Muddy Church is very intergenerational. And I remember seeing a 90-year-old man who had had the most amazing life, sharing his stories of mission and adventures that he'd had with some of the teenagers from our church. And normally they wouldn't have spent any time together. But in this setting, as they walked alongside each other, they shared about life, of the hopes and dreams, of inspiration, of things to come and things that had happened before. And that sums up Muddy Church, really, offering those places where all people can gather together, and using we have lots of different resources available that people can use. It's not just about having programs that we go to once a week, but actually people are finding that Muddy Church becomes part of their everyday. So during lockdown, Muddy Church has grown massively because people have wanted to find ways to continue working with their community, with children, with young people, with families, and with individuals. And so Muddy Church is offering that because we've run a number of trails, QR trails, that people can get out and do. Lots of our ideas are based around families, households, bubbles, being able to go out and recognising the places in their community that they can go to and use that aren't going to cause restrictions.